And go. Hello and welcome everybody back to Nerds of Legend. I'm Ben, next to me is Joel, and then below me is Brendan. This week we're going to be talking about Foundation by Isaac Asimov. Just a couple housekeeping things before we dive right in. Reminder, we've got our regular D&D session tomorrow. And then Saturday, we're going to be doing a very special Call of Cthulhu stream as a collaboration with Original GM. And then that following Monday, we will actually be interviewing an author of a previous book that we talked about, Maria V. Snyder, where we will be talking about her works, particularly Poison Study. And we're very excited, and so is she, and we can't believe that happened. So we're
very excited.
We'll be doing that on Monday. So with those things out of the way, let's dive right in. So I know how I felt about this book. Joel, I know that you have mixed feelings. So let's should we do a little bit of a sort of
do a synopsis.
So Foundation is a book written in the 40s, in the height of World War II.
It's in 1951.
Yes.
Yeah. So quick note. So Asimov wrote it in a serial fashion for, I think it was Astounding Science Fiction, and was writing it in the 40s in pieces.
Yep.
Later compiled into a book in 51.
The original novel. It's actually and then there's actually 6 total novels in this series, I think, maybe 5. But essentially it's sort of what it is there's a sort of view of humanity 40,000 years in the future, maybe even further than that. You're going to start seeing some parallels with a certain thing. But basically, you have this fall...
The 41st
Games Workshop is like, what an interesting date.
And basically, it's so far in the future, and humanity's expanded throughout the entire galaxy to the point where they've even lost record of the original birthplace of humanity. It's led by an emperor, and the empire at this point has been crumbling for centuries. At this point, you have a child emperor. There's all kinds of loss of knowledge where people don't even know how certain technologies work, or even there's certain planets that don't have contact with each other because of the sort of cultural drift that's happened. You have an aristocracy that's leading everything, and they're all bloodthirsty and just snipe at each other and try and vie for power, because the line of succession of the emperors has been very weak for a long time. And then what happens is as you're approaching this sort of end of the empire, you have a mathematician, or also known as in this book as a psychohistorian, who basically using statistics and knowledge of sociology and psychology
because everyone knows the best grasps of mathematics are psychologists.
Right.
And I can speak with a lot of authority on this subject, having a couple degrees in psychology. We don't know shit past basic arithmetic.
Yeah, and it's sort of it's kind of where at the time when Asimov wrote this, that's where we thought sort of you were going to be able to predict human behavior on a grand scale using statistics and mob psychology and stuff like that. And
that works so well.
You have this man, Harry Seldon, who's basically the best psychohistorian that ever lived, and he predicts that the empire will fall within 500 years. And then in the process of this, because of that prediction, he ends up getting basically put on trial by the government, and he puts so forth of a case that they're like, listen, we're not going to let this go to trial, but we'll give you a planet at the ass end of nowhere, and you can do what you think you can do to stave off the fall of Terminus, literally. So literally the end of the galaxy.
I do love how that. Never mind. Continue, and then we can break that down.
Yeah. So at the end of the galaxy, because Harry Seldon says, I cannot prevent the fall of the Empire, but I can make the effects of the fall of humanity lessened
from 30,000 years to just 1 millennium.
Yes, by creating an encyclopedia of all human knowledge. And so they're like, fine, go away, stop giving us your doom and gloom. They call him the Crow.
And it was called
they call
Encyclopedias Galactica.
Yes.
Which then, as a translation goes, it became the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Not yet. No. So what you have happen is 50...
Cultural drift.
Basically,
created.
Harry Seldon figured out it's going to fall faster than what I did, but if I gave them 500 years, they were going to let me do my thing and leave me alone. So he starts this sort of group, and they call themselves the Foundation. And so the Foundation's...
Where are you going?
The encyclopedists, but...
Yeah, no, those are the people in it. The encyclopedists were his group.
Yeah, so basically, like this toil of the Foundation is told in five segments: the psychohistorians, the encyclopedists, the mayors, the traders, and the merchant princes. So it's sort of the trajectory that the Foundation takes as it takes on different issues.
It's like the chronological growth.
Yeah.
Of the Foundation.
Yeah. So you have the encyclopedists who think, oh, our only thing that we have to do is chronicle human knowledge, and they're ignoring the fact that like they've lost contact with the main empire. There's all these kingdoms that have risen that are not like paying attention to anything the emperor cares about, not acknowledging the Foundation's claim of the planet, and wanting to just basically claim it as a military base because of its location in the area of between 4 different kingdoms. There's a mayor of the city of the Foundation. I can't think of Terminus. I can't think of the name of him right off the top of my head. Brennan, if you'll help me.
It's not important.
It's not important. Basically, he foresees Mayor Hardin. He foresees like, oh shit, this shit's gonna fall. We have to like figure out what we're doing before like one of these kingdoms decides we're not worth the trouble and wipes us off the map. So what he figures out is like, oh, all these kingdoms that exist, they've actually lost the knowledge of nuclear power.
Yeah, but that was, you missed the part that was after they became when Harry Seldon had his time capsule open up, and he was like, "Listen,
listen,
fucker, what you think you're doing, you're not actually doing."
So you get to this point, and there's basically Harry Seldon was able to calculate he's
Nostradamus.
Yeah, he's able to basically isolate and calculate the trajectory that the Foundation will take in order for them to recreate the empire of mankind. So the empire of mankind. So basically the Foundation...
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
On their atomic...
Weird. So what happens is Harry Seldon's like, all right, he basically made these like hologram video diaries that would only come on the anniversary of the founding, or is it his death or the founding? I can't remember.
50 years.
So it's like 50 years after the founding of the Foundation, all of a sudden this hologram turns on, powered by a radium clock that says, all right, so you may have figured out that your job here isn't to make an encyclopedia.
Which none of them did. That was amazing, too.
Yeah, none of them had figured out, except for one dude.
They were all blindsided.
One dude, the mayor, and he's basically like, I've set my hologram to appear on certain crucial dates where you will find yourself where you have nowhere else, where there's only one path forward, where your internal and external troubles become so great that there is only one way. You have one way forward, or two paths: one that leads to the next step, and one that leads to your destruction. And they're like, "Oh shit!" And then they're like, "Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we were wrong. Like, we were about to like lynch you, but please lead us." And so the mayor's thing that he does is he goes to these barbarian kingdoms and he starts giving them technology. But he doesn't just give them the technology. He's like, "I will give you the technology, but you have to send your people to me, and we will teach them how to use the tech." But he leaves out the part where he tells them how to like actually make it work. They just know how to build it. They know how to maintain it, but it's all hidden behind religious mumbo jumbo, and thus the religion of science was born.
And fast forward, like in the next section, what is it? 100 years or 50 years or something?
It's another 50 years hence.
Yeah, and nobody understands what they're doing other than now they're going through ritual to take care of the technology. And the only people, and now Terminus is like, nobody can touch it.
Yeah.
You don't mess with it. Even the military bases that they put on, they're like, we can't risk it.
Yeah.
We need to get off this land. The Empire has split up into 4 kingdoms at this point.
In their vicinity. You have the 4 kingdoms in their vicinity.
And they're like borderline feudalistic now.
Yeah, so they've gone full feudalism in these other kingdoms. And
to the point of
it's like an uneasy truce. So like if one of these kingdoms gets like a one over on another one, then Terminus is toast.
Yeah, but Terminus has set themselves up as the only ones that can handle any kind of maintaining of any kind of technology whatsoever under the guise of it being a religious system and like essentially praying to the machine spirit.
Yeah, so you have this one kingdom that like gets big for its britches and thinks they're gonna just go and like nuke the shit out of Terminus because they get their hands on a big old battleship.
Yeah, but they don't even know how to turn it on.
But the thing is, the mayor goes to the kingdom and he's like, and the viceroy or the kingdom is like, "I have you now," or the prince regent, and he's like, "I have you now, and now I'm going to kill the Foundation." He's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, at midnight tonight, your entire kingdom is going to come to a stop because I've told all of my priests that to stop working and that you're a heretic." And so that exactly happens, and the priest, this class of priests that the mayor created, basically takes over everything, and then because of this, the Foundation has basically taken over all 4 kingdoms, because now it's like, well, if we go against them, now we know that we're toast, because all our shit that we were going to use, all our weapons and armor and all these nice things that we've gotten used to having will go away. So
it's sort of like the comparison between hard power, like a gun in your hand, and soft power, or like social power.
Yeah,
it's like during the Dark Ages, all of the various fiefdoms and kingdoms that were warring with each other, they all still were paying taxes to the church. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the Foundation scientism, the technology that everyone else relies on, it predicates everything else.
Yeah, because none of the peasants were going to march to war unless the church said it was okay.
Right, yeah, and so in this case, it's like, you want us to raise arms against those who give us everything that in our house that makes our lives better. Yeah. All the technology that improves our lives, all the technology that's advanced our civilization. You want us to just remove it? It's like exposing the culture of the West. It's like jobs, food, functioning internet, and you give this panoply of goodies to people, and all of a sudden, like in the Cold War, you had all these Russians that were deciding they were going to cross over and their only request was, I want my kids to go to American schools and I want to live in America. And it's like, how easy was it for you to switch sides when like all they did was taste the candy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so and that brings us to the next part of the book where we come across the merchants, or the traders. So as the Foundation has cemented its leadership around these four kingdoms, they start sending out ships to the neighboring areas, neighboring planets, and basically being like, here's our religion that makes your life really easy, and also here's this stuff we can sell you, because Terminus is a planet that's basically devoid of all like metallic resources, which they need in order to like create more technological advancements and like make the stuff that everybody wants. So they're like, we'll take all of your raw metals that you can spare, and in exchange, we'll give you these fun, like, doodads that aren't going to work unless our priests are there. And it continues for that until they reach a point where, like, oh, we've got these planets that have heard about what happened to this other planet when we brought all our stuff and our religion, and now all of a sudden they're not a kingdom anymore, and they're, like, under the Foundation's thumb. So you've got these autocrats that don't want anything to do with it, don't want the religion, but they like money. So like there's certain traders figure out, oh, if I just get rid of the religion aspect, then and just trade on it and make them economically dependent on me because I'm the only one with the key to how their stuff works, then we don't need the religion part anymore. We don't need the dogma. And that's where the book basically reaches full circle. And I can't remember off the top of my head right now if that final chapter so you basically these little small time traders that would like tithe to the Foundation basically become like merchant princes, where they are basically running parts of the galaxy on their own because like they have the key to the Foundation's knowledge, they have the key to like vast technological bounty, and in exchange they're like, it's like, I'm in charge now because I've got the most powerful, military in the area that's willing to back me up so that they can have their like electric toothbrushes.
Just imagine guys in red robes just with the electric
toothbrush. So basically that's sort of like the whole thing of the book. You see this sort of evolution of how the Foundation operates. It gets really more into it, and they find out that at the end of the book they find out that there's parts of the Empire that are still active, and that they are seeing evidence that there is a second Foundation that was put on all the way on the opposite end of the galaxy that is still in operation.
By Harry Seldon.
By Harry Seldon.
Yeah.
So, which I'm not going to get into it right now, but it gets really interesting in the second one with the second Foundation, where you've got basically the whole thing with the first Foundation is like Harry Seldon didn't put any psychohistorians on the first Foundation because he didn't want them trying to like figure out on their own how to calculate the future. But on the other ass end of the galaxy, that's where he sent all of those people as like his back pocket.
Fail-safe, almost. Yeah.
So it gets really interesting in the second one, where like all these psychohistorians have figured out how to like, they're like telepathic and like they've like unlocked parts of the brain and can do like telekinesis and like can mind control people and shit. So it's like all the psychers are over there and all of the Adeptus Mechanicus is over here. And I know like maybe some of our viewers are noticing we're drawing parallels with 40K, and it's because
shamelessly just 40K
like blatantly throughout this entire book is basically like all of the science religion that exists in this book is literally just the Adeptus Mechanicus without the body mods.
That was a journey to get there.
Yeah.
Like, you just took us on like a 25-minute journey on this book. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to read it.
Foundation is certainly an extremely influential piece of science fiction.
I can see the importance of it. Like, it definitely lays the groundwork. So, like, as I was reading it, and I only got halfway through because, I have a baby and she didn't give a shit that I was trying to do stuff. But you could see how each piece has influenced the next.
There's a reason Isaac Asimov is considered basically the father of science fiction, and it's because of books like this. He basically founded the whole concept of transhumanism, futurism, that sort of thing. He may not have gotten all the scientific details right, but he didn't try to. He wasn't trying to hand wave, make up words, and create things. He just said, "This is where I envision humanity will be."
Yeah,
way out. 100,000 years from now, this is where I hope and I think humanity will be.
Yeah. So Foundation was published as a single work in 1951. Mm-hmm. I first tried to read this in high school, sophomore year in my high school library. And by that point, there had been multiple reprintings.
Yeah.
You look at the cover, you read it. It felt to me like a Del Rey paperback. It felt to me like a 70s sci-fi book. The fact that Asimov wrote this during World War II.
He wrote it 30 years before any of that, 70s sci-fi was happening. And
he wrote this in the 40s. It's astounding to me for the 40s, the accuracy with which he describes human character, where technology would be. There's a growing there's a large amount of people that refer to sci-fi as speculative fiction.
Yeah.
I think Asimov is one of the greatest examples of a speculative writer.
Yeah.
Where society would go, how people would act. It's almost like psychohistory, predicting how technology would unfold in the future with such accuracy in the 40s. It's honestly I had to double take. It was astounding, the quality of the writing at the time. Not to say I'm not going to bash on Robert E. Howard or these high fantasy writers who wrote very, very different subjects of books where you're not talking about technology in the future. But for science fiction writing, compared to listening to Captain Midnight serials and Buck Rogers and stuff, it's
Gordon.
Yeah, Flash Gordon. It's astounding.
Yeah, he basically
it does strike as weird because I'm a big fan of the radio dramas, and so especially like X-1 and Dimension X and all of the ones that were in the late 40s, early 50s. And you are correct. There is a little bit of the intellectual exceptionalism that is pervasive from anything written, around that time period, especially that came out of I'm pretty sure Isaac Asimov, he was in the States, so that came from the American ideal that we wake up and we kick ass in the 40s, especially in the 40s. That was at its peak.
Yeah.
Sort of needed it. You needed this national fervor because of the war.
And there was some frustrations to me. Again, there's some things that are very dated. They celebrate with tobacco. Atomic power is the pinnacle of energy production.
You're telling me 40,000 years from now that we're still going to be smoking cigars? I mean, maybe, but or taking snuff.
Cigars. And
snuff is dead now. But
they're we still have the part where they're you have atomic power. Fuck, we're still burning coal. What the fuck is happening? Are you you're still burning coal? You didn't have a windmill? At no point.
It was really funny how they're obviously all we have is atomic power, the cleanest and only alternative to energy.
I'm man, wait till the 2000s hit, you get a whole bunch of other ideas.
It was clearly at the time it was the forefront. As Asimov probably didn't even realize that as he was writing Foundation, we were surreptitiously getting
the Manhattan Project was still going.
A secret. It was very much a secret. So it's amazing how on the pulse he was, though, when a mere 2.5-3 years after he was midway through Foundation, we dropped the atomic weapons. So it's So it says a lot.
But his atomic weapons were ray guns that just boiled people.
That was a staple. One of my favorite is they're captured, and all they have to build with. Now, remember, the professor is a professor, God knows what, in Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
They're like, the city is falling, it's held up by light, and he's like, I'll handle this, and he used some atomic bullshit to make a city out of light. Like, their grasp of science was mediocre at best in some of it, so at least Asimov kind of, like, stuck with stuff that's existing nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, that did exist. Like he didn't make up shit that is, to our current understanding, completely impossible.
No.
You know? Like the guy being like, oh, I'm a professor. I don't know what school in 1944 would have been like, let me teach you how to deal with alien technology to build light bridges. Because I don't think we got one now. But
we haven't figured out hard
Asimov
light yet, no.
Asimov stuff was dated. Like when he talked about psychologists understanding mathematics. I don't know what psychologists you know, but
if you think
the
of
ones I knew
psychohistory,
were not.
Psychohistory is basically like combinatorial mathematics. It's like differential equations. It's like actuarial science. It's essentially
that's literally.
Oh, no, I'm referring to the concept being like, how would we understand it? We don't have a psychologist anywhere on this planet.
Well, yeah.
I'm like, have you tried, I don't know, the bars? That's where they usually hang out.
Yeah. Well, like, when I was taking differential equations in college, my professor, he was a mathematician at Mizzou, and he was calculating cryobiology. So he was making mathematical systems to predict the manner in which liquids freeze and predicting the patterns they would make. So that doesn't have a human aspect to it or a behavioral aspect. But you look at sabermetrics in baseball. You look at the prediction of how someone's going to perform based on previous activity, and you mate that with combinatorial mathematics, and essentially, this idea of futuristic historians predicting human outcomes. I mean, you look at Milton Friedman, you look at economists. It's really just psychohistory is the science of just predicting using multiple studies.
And that's what's interesting about it is because it's constantly mentioned by Harry Seldon. He's like, I can't predict, even though it seems like he was able to. It's like alluded to.
No.
It's like it's not possible to predict the behavior of one singular individual.
Yeah,
but if you look at like it's like we actually use engineering equations. They use it for civil engineering for like you can model the behavior of a crowd based off of the principles of fluid mechanics. Right. Like a crowd of people moves through a crowd in such a way that is like that of a fluid. So if you look at it from that perspective, can you guys still hear me?
It's fading in and out a little bit, but we can hear you.
Hold on, I lost my sound.
Yeah, we can still hear you though.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about the time period in which Asimov wrote Foundation,
powering on, mic off.
Probably within the past century, the most tumultuous, time period in human history.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
Unlike the crazy calm we have now.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna get political at all, but in Putin's latest speech, he mentioned that this is going to be the most momentous decade since World War II. So individuals in power today are making.
Yeah, I can handle no more tumultuous though. That would be nice.
Right. Yeah. Had my fill, but
yeah, no, I'd like to no longer live in history. Fuck that. Like, let's just.
So imagine Asimov's position in 42. It was still a complete uncertainty whether or not we'd be victorious in the Pacific, much like the European theater. So I mean, Tolkien, when he was writing, they were near contemporaries, and when they published their works, Tolkien and Asimov. They were compiling them in the 40s and published them as works in the early 50s. To be in that environment, you think about the world in the macro perspective. Like from Tom Clancy wasn't exactly the the bard in explaining human character, but he was able to write geopolitical events from a macro perspective with surprising efficacy. When he wrote The Hunt for Red October, and the U.S. Naval Press actually decided to publish that book, he was approached by the government.
And they're like, "Who talked to you?"
Because he had speculative ideas relating to classified military technology that he guessed correctly.
Well, and tactics too.
Yeah,
he like basically guessed like by just like thinking about like, how would a submarine warfare work? He like basically like called out like the Navy for like a bunch of their like submarine tactics in Hunt for Red October, and they're like, "All right." It's like, "You're not in trouble."
Who told you?
Who told you? And he's like,
I'll never
literally
know.
nobody. I just figured that like it was logical that that's how it worked, and they're like,
Yeah. All right.
"Sounds like we need to update our tactics manuals."
It sounds like we need you to write more books.
And then didn't they bring him in as a consultant after that, or something?
Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. And that was the first of many successful books for him. So there's a common adage that the most difficult thing to do is to write a character who is intelligent, or write a genius character, because you have to be at or around that level of intelligence to approximate it correctly. The fact that Asimov was, writing from such a macro perspective, and taking some like Harry Seldon's character, for example, is essentially making the claim that men of science, individuals of peace and research and knowledge, are those best suited to make decisions of power. He's essentially saying Harry Seldon is deciding that he's going to take the course of human history in his hands, because politicians, military men, businessmen, aristocrats, plutocrats, will only lead it to ruin or for their own ends. So he's taking a very, he's on a soapbox there.
Well,
and he's
like
also go ahead.
The crown jewel of the empire, which is like the capital city, or capital planet, which is basically
Coruscant?
It's a city. Yeah, it's Coruscant. Is basically like has devolved to the point where like the people that live and work there don't even see the sun.
Yeah, they go outside, they freak out.
Yeah, because
they freak out
because they've lived their entire lives in hallways, and it's like the entire like this planet, which is like the greatest human feat ever, which is like they have basically humanity has conquered an entire planet and like basically created an entire city planet, is like somewhat of like a failure, because by this point in the empire it's basically just devolved into being it's like a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
The thing that I like most about this is in you taking the journey. See, now, even though I didn't get a chance to read the entire book, I did read the synopsis. And how it took the full circle. It was a very good. Now, again, I know I bash psychology and I talk shit about it all the time, but I do love it. Like, I do love psychology, and I have studied a shitload of it, including going to school for a number of degrees. So I like the way that it takes the journey that tracks like the human ambition. It started out with Harry Seldon, guy that's like, things are fucked up. We need to save it. I'm going to save humanity. They're like, no, you're going to ruin the empire. You're going to ruin what we've worked for. And he's like, no, I love it so much. I'm trying to preserve it so that we can endure. And they're like, fuck that. We don't like it. But he moves on because he's convinced that he has the right, the right stance, and has a moral responsibility that supersedes the orders of the group. He has a responsibility. Since no one's listening, I'm going to do it myself. Yeah. And so he proceeds. He sets the groundwork to, I'm going to get screwed. Let me see if I can manipulate this so where I can get screwed into the least. Obviously he wants to stay on the capital planet with the best libraries and the best everything, but he can't. So he's like, all right, well, I'm going to try to set me up here where nobody's going to try to take my stuff and I can do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then he moves forward. He he knows the best part. Like, I was hooked. The first book, the first section, I loved it. Like, the founding of Terminus and that journey, I loved it. When they get to Terminus 50 years later, was when the story you start seeing the nuances fall in, and then you actually taking the human ambition journey, and you watch these people who they've been doing it for 50 years. Harry Seldon didn't tell anybody at all, except for one dude, what he was actually doing. He didn't tell anybody because he knew, being like, listen, what we're really doing is we're going to set up a system that is going to make knowledge indispensable, but we can't share it because people are too stupid to use it effectively. And instead he's like, we're making an encyclopedia. And if anybody knows anything about research or writing papers or like gathering of data, by the time you're done, you know that subject so fucking well that you can regurgitate it in your sleep because it's all you've done. That's all you've done is you focus, you pieced it apart, you think about your study that you did for your senior seminar project or your master's thesis or whatever it is. You know that shit inside and out because you have paused and pored over it and run the numbers and rerun the numbers and wrote and rewrote, torn the text apart, did it again. You know everything about it. It's like that, or when you create a story and you write the story, you know that so intimately. Yeah. And so that's why he had these people create this encyclopedia, because for 5 decades, these encyclopedists, that's all they did. Yep. They poured over human knowledge of whatever, and it was all the important stuff, science,
the most
math,
important things that humanity knows right now.
We need to keep the lights on and keep everybody happy and nobody freezing to death.
Yeah.
And so then 50 years goes by, where that's all they do. This whole planet does nothing but focus on it. And then he gets the zealots and the intellectuals, and then he's like, all right, nerds, now we need the people who want to make sure stuff's safe. And it starts moving out. And then
now we need the people that want to make sure that we, like, keep this.
Yeah. And then you bring in the bureaucrats, and you bring in the managers. It's like building a company. You get the passion people who are like, we're going to only do this, and we don't care. And then the guy's like, let's make money and get this shit out. So he's like, now we bring in the managers.
So what's an interesting sort of thing that happens in this first section of the book is that the mayor character, which again escapes my brain, he basically like maybe probably wasn't supposed to be there, but he took like a psychology for a little bit and then dropped out. So he might have otherwise he might have been disqualified for the program.
I don't think anybody took psychology. I think
the mayor. No, the mayor. He was literally he took a brief he initially studied psychohistory for a year or two, and then decided, you know what? No, I'm just gonna go into leadership, politics. So he was able to see sort of the writing on the wall a little bit of what's happening, and then what happens is an interesting thing that happens in the first part of this book is they have one of the leaders of the encyclopedists calls in their imperial representative, who is basically there to just say oh no, everything's fine, nothing's wrong.
They'll be like, look at how big my imperial junk is.
Yeah, so he's oh yes, I enjoy this place, and then he's talks about this. I'm something of an archaeologist, and then,
that jackass. Yeah.
And and then he's and then he's like, what's your big thing that you study? He's like, I've studied in terms of where the origin of the human species is. He's like, there's some fools that thinks it's so, but I myself think it's in the Arcteria system. And he's like, cool. What leads you to that conclusion? He's like, well,
I've read books.
He's like, I've read the works of so and so, and I think I've read all of the books on the subject, and I think based off of that it's the Arcteria system, which, you, the reader, knows that's false. It's Sol. It's the Sol system. And
yeah.
But
I like how they forget
But
where
then
planet's from, but they remember what the sun was named.
Yeah. So like
I don't know what Earth is, but we definitely know what the sun is.
So the mayor's like, when was that book written? He's like, 600 years ago or so. And he's like, why don't you go to the Arcturus system and find out for yourself? He's like, well, if someone else has already done the work for me, why would I take the effort to do it? Why don't I just read their work and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it's basically the parallel that's drawn is like humanity has reached this point where it's like we don't like figure out shit on our own. We don't innovate. We've just been content. Like that's why the empire is falling, is because instead of innovating and becoming better, they've just
it became feudal. It became
they've just been content.
We are the leading families.
They've been content to.
Historically speaking, is the people who had any power then seemed to keep it. You know, like, oh, I did this. Well, my son might do it as well, but his son might be a fucking idiot.
Yeah, it's just.
But they have moved on to the point where the third book.
Yeah.
The third book starts with the kid who's like, I'm the king. I'm a god king. But all he does is hunt these giant ass birds with a needle gun, which honestly sounds stupid and boring. But like, he's like, I'm the king.
I just envision it's just a paintball gun that shoots needles.
Right, you could tell whoever was reading this from Game Workshop, just when they read the giant atomic throne, just got the massive boner, and they're like, what if we painted gold? We could have a god emperor painted gold.
I think what's funny is
they're going to capture a dragon. That's how I'll find Rogel Dorn. Shut up! Nobody cares!
The science religion people all wear crimson robes.
Yeah! Because the Games Workshop fucking read this and was
I'm looking at you, GW.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to make the Adeptus Mechanicus. Why? Because Encyclopedias Galacticus sounds stupid. Okay.
It's a testament to Asimov's vision that
he knew GW was going to make a game.
And he knew GW would make a game of this work. No, the prediction of human complacency if technology renders us docile, right?
Yeah.
And the shrinking of the mind if answers are presented to you rather than evidence presented to you.
But there's a unique in sci-fi for me is like I'm hard fantasy. Like I love fantasy stories because like the one thing is fantasy can never happen, right? Like we don't have magic, and if we do, it's so secret nobody fucking knows about it.
It's in Orlando.
It's all in Orlando. There's like 3 dudes that actually know about it, and they're like, you have to dress super flashy for it, and that's the only way it works. But like, magic is what sets fantasy apart. All the rest of the shit in fantasy can happen. Like you can have people, fighting with swords and battles and all that shit. But sci-fi takes such a journey for us. Sci-fi takes. I'm getting an echo. I gotta stop screaming. I'm always so loud whenever I do this. I'm like,
you're passionate, Joel.
I know. I get really heated on these certain subjects. Yeah. But so sci-fi to me, I have two. There's like you love it or you fucking hate it. Like there's no middle ground,
Well, and my favorite genre.
Huh?
That's my favorite genre.
I can tell it's both your favorite genres because you're both dorks. Unlike fantasy, where fantasy is obviously the cooler one. But no, so.
What's the coolest guy in the Nerds of Legend podcast? Flips down shades.
Yeah, nobody. No, but nobody in their history of the world have been like Joel's cool. Nobody said that. But like, fantasy takes a journey, and I know there's a million different in the spectrum of sci-fi. You have the like me science, and have done big things, all the way to like. Oh, then like the space cowboys, like Cowboy Bebop, super fun, love that kind of shit. All the way up to, like they're living essentially like it's almost a fantasy world because technology has become so sunk in that it's just all in the background, and they're like this crazy high society that lives very simplistically, but literally technology is so deep in it, everybody else thinks it's magic. So like this walked that line from the annoying, like hyper intellectual, like look at how smart we are and what we've accomplished, to let's throw it back into like an almost feudalistic society, and people are just like, did you pray over your computer today to turn it on? That kind of shit. And it was interesting. It was frustrating to me because each particular story was like, this is awesome. Like the first one, you're obviously on like Coruscant. I can't remember what it's called, so it's fucking Coruscant. And you're on this like city planet, pinnacle of the Empire of Mankind. You guys are fucked up. You need to figure this out. You need to change what you're doing, or it's gonna fall apart. Skip a section. Next section, the God Emperor's needle hunting birds, and you're like, how did we get here in like 50 pages? But
Trantor, by the way.
Yeah, it took such Coruscant. Yes, Trantor Coruscant.
It's hard sci-fi. The Wire. It's a macro perspective.
Yeah.
It's a universe. I mean, you're jumping planet to planet. You're jumping 50 years, 100 years. It's very much a story without a true protagonist. It's very much the protagonist is the human race.
The protagonist was our level of complacency and also our level of understanding, because there's a big difference between knowing the answer and knowing how to get to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because I know I have to put gas in my car does not mean I understand how to build a fuel combustion engine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand that. I know the basics of how atomic power works, and like I remember in high school where they show you the nucleus exploding and nuclear fission. It doesn't mean I'm able to build a reactor. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but these people have answers, but no ability to understand them. And what's interesting is then they take away the ability to understand them. Like, pretty much they're just doing like lubrication schedules and general maintenance, and they're like, that's your church ritual. So they keep shit running. And so even the people who are doing it don't understand what they're doing. And it's just this unique system. Like, only like 10 people know how to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they just teach people how to like maintain.
No, one planet knows how to do everything.
Huh?
One planet knows how to do the stuff. It's just everybody else does it.
But it becomes this like power system where like these people, and then like everything, well, I know how to do something and you don't. Therefore, I'm now in a preferred class. I have power, and I have and then people moving on.
Well, that's the whole point. I know you didn't finish the book. That's like the whole point.
It's still compelling.
It
just takes me on an emotional journey.
So, like, you have this rise of this priest class in the middle of the book, and then by the end of the book, you have the merchant princes basically dismantle that priest class because like, we don't need this anymore. Yeah, we don't need this anymore because it's like all the people that are dependent on us. It's like this religion is going to be still practiced on certain planets, but like we're at the point now where like we need to be able to like trade with people outside of this. Basically, like the foundation like grows in spurts. So you have the four kingdoms which like fall under this like sort of religious fervor and are going to protect the foundation with everything they've got. And then you've got the traders that grow it out further who are like they're able to like sort of like create these like the religion outside of this sphere. But they're not able to like really like create like the sort of zealots that exist in the four kingdoms. And then you get to the merchant princes, which they've extended out even further, and they figure out, oh, the empire is still out there, but recently it's like, oh, they're crumbling because like they found out there's a planet that's on the edge of the current empire that recently they just outlawed the nuclear power, or atomics as they call it, because a plant exploded because they don't know how to fix them anymore.
Yeah, but didn't you say like with them becoming the merchant princes, don't they become like a ruling class near the end?
It's sort of like that, but it's more like
that would mean this whole thing becomes a secular story.
So the whole thing with the merchant princes, the whole thing, the whole thing with them is it's not necessarily. It's like they're just able to wield a lot more Basically, what happens is this merchant prince that's created like an empire by trading with this planet that wouldn't play by the Foundation's rules, who basically outlawed the religion or the sending of missionaries. He was able to convince this guy to bring in, these the stuff and what it was able to convince the guy to trade with them at the expense of not having the church involved. But so like what happens when like this guy Mallow lands on the planet for the first time that anyone has in a while, the Commodore sends basically a guy that's disguised as a tech priest, that's what I'm going to call it, onto his ship to basically be like, hey, to basically determine if if Mallow's worth talking to. He sends this tech priest on and says like, oh, they're going to kill me, you must save me. But in reality, the guy's like the secret police for the planet, which, because like there's been Foundation ships disappearing in this sector, that's what's going on. They infiltrate with a secret policeman and then send him off, and then the secret policeman takes over the ship and brings it back. But Mallow is basically like, it's like pegs the guy as like he's a fake, and then they try him for murder for like leaving this secret policeman to die. He's like, actually the dude was like in the Commodore told me, he's like, that was like one of his like his cops. So, and then at the end of it, like this merchant prince guy takes over the Foundation and like runs for mayor at this point.
It still sounds like, and again, I haven't had the chance to finish it because of a demanding young baby, but it still sounds like what you're telling me is the book has gone full circle. It sounds like it has gone where you everybody forgot what the thing and have created these cumbersome political systems.
Yeah.
And then one man's like, this is going to break. Let's preserve, teach, educate. Now we hold all the knowledge. Started back over. Like you could flip the book back over and just change the names to the first guy and go back.
So essentially, he becomes a merchant prince he only sells technology that's going to like improve that society. But like all of that technology that he sells to this planet is going to break after like days, weeks, months, or whatever.
We've seen.
It's late.
I know about Apple. Yeah, I know how.
Yeah, it's basically Apple. It's an Apple. He sells them an Apple subscription.
Yeah, he sells them an Apple or a Google subscription. I know how that shit works. Yeah. I have bought a cell phone.
Yeah. You start with the collapse of society. You then go to like feudal Europe, and then you come full circle to late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like creating things to break so that you have.
But the thing being,
persistent.
Yeah, basically, like he's only selling them to these planets so that when this planet attempts to like go to war with the Foundation because they're like pissed at him for doing this, but then before they can even like launch the war and like fight them, all of their shit breaks down. So he doesn't even have to do anything.
See, but that's like how I look at when I read history. Is like it's all who has and who doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's like back in the days with feudalism, where did the nobility have their power? They had the land. They didn't. It's not that they were great or they're strong. No, you own the land. You want to grow fucking potatoes? You planted in my dirt, and so they had the stuff.
And then you have the kingdoms,
capitalism that we talk about now, as you were saying, late stage capitalism. We don't worry so much about land as we worry about who's got the stuff. Like, I want somebody to make a phone, so I'm going to buy a fucking iPhone. And then what's going to happen? I know in 2 years, I'm going to need to get a new iPhone. Or if I get an iPad in 4 years, I'm not going to be able to update it anymore, and then I have to get a new iPad. And I understand that because they have the stuff, and I'm lazy as shit, and I want to use the stuff. So that's all it is. It's like it's the same thing. It's just a rebranding of the same thing. We don't need the land anymore. because Whole Foods has the stuff that I can buy to feed myself.
Basically,
it's
like a mirror.
That's what I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Was this book took you on a journey from one thing, we're going to save it, and it always starts, and every good story always starts out as a solid. Harry Seldon wanted to save the Empire because he believed in it and he loved it and he wanted humanity to persevere. If he would have looked and saw himself, and now I don't know, maybe he did in the end of the book, but he would have seen him as becoming merchant princes and these intellectual like bastion, where like we are the only ones that have the knowledge and have the ability to do X.
Yeah.
He would have, I don't feel the character, as they explained him, would have carried it on. I feel like he would have been like, nope, that's not the world I want it to be in. He believed for the pure intellectual and progress for progress' sake and preservation of humanity for humanity's sake. But the human element got involved and created the religion. The human element got involved and created the merchants. And then they created the merchant princes who are like, well, if you don't come to me, where are you going to go? Oh, nowhere. So now you're going to pay what I tell you.
So that's the thing, Joel, is every single one of these pivotal moments of the Foundation where they're on the brink of, like, being destroyed by both internal and external forces, Harry Seldon's projection shows up and says,
"Oh, well, then I'm excited to see."
So, like, each of these sections ends with basically a Harry Seldon prophecy.
So he does. So he is a jackass.
Yeah.
Then at the end.
Sorry, I skipped over that part. So, like, at the end of the psychohistorian age, the encyclopedia stage, Harry Seldon shows up. He's like, "Good, you figured out how to control these kingdoms, but be careful about this part." And then they enter, and then the next stage of the mayors, where it's like, "Good, you figured out that you can stave this off." That's 50 years later. You figured out how to stave off this problem, but, like, be wary of using you're keeping knowledge from people as a weapon, because that will quickly, like, become your problem. Again, you skip forward another, I can't remember what the time skip is, to the end of the Traitor Age, but it's the same thing. He's like, all right, yeah, it's like, you've got these traitors that happen, and they're able, like, you figured out, oh, like, religion isn't gonna cut it anymore. And then at the end of this book, it's like the Mal's like, Seldon's got it figured out. I don't even care. Like, I know that, like, every time that we've had one of these Seldon crises, the best thing that we've been able to do is just do nothing.
Yeah. Well, because the way you're explaining it, where he's like, well, you're keeping knowledge from people, now how you're going to do it, it sounds like it's like he himself, by keeping the knowledge from the group of his goal, is what's causing these problems, because he's like, all right, go do this.
Yeah.
We got any guidelines? They're like, no. And so, like, great, church it is. Maybe stop churching and start telling people, right, sell them everything, like. Well,
like, basically, like, the whole.
I really wish I would have been able to finish
the whole point of these, like, Seldon crises is like, he shows up. No, it's not even because they're fucking up. It's like the next stage of their, like, evolution, or their, like, journey to, like, becoming in charge of the entire galaxy.
It's graduating to the next stage.
Yeah. So basically, it's like, good. It's like, if I'm right, and he's like, and I'm 93% sure that you are, you just experienced X.
Right.
He's clippy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like you're trying to enter the industrial age. Can I help?
Yeah. It's basically like your guide in Civ 5 or whatever. It's like.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's interesting, is because, like, there's times where they're like, oh, we need to do something, but there's also, like, at the end of the book, it's been, like, become like, oh, everyone's just, like, everyone's thing that they've needed to do when we encounter one of these crises has been just, like, do nothing. which is what leads into problems later. So it's been a while since I've read the books, but eventually what happens is there's one time where like the Foundation almost falls and Selden doesn't show up.
So they become overly reliant.
So
on
like
this,
they're like, have we?
like-
They're like, have we like diverged from the path? Like,
That's funny.
it becomes a whole big thing.
I'm gonna need to get off here. So
Okay. Yeah. As someone who technically hasn't read past the first Foundation, it's sort of like thinking of thinking of the Fellowship of the Ring, and
Go ahead.
thinking of Fellowship of the Ring versus thinking of the entire trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
I can say, like, from Foundation, I see that Harry Seldon's vision of humanity is, having seen the history before, he knows what's coming is cyclical in nature.
Yeah.
There's a quote from Harry Seldon that his followers rely on that's essentially along the lines of, don't let your morality get in the way of doing what's right.
Yeah.
Which is very Machiavellian, very to the ends justify the means.
Well, that's basically like, hey, get rid of the religion part. And
well,
I
that's
think
the
is
thing,
what
though.
his message, right?
Harry Seldon probably correctly predicted that the easiest way to have someone adhere to something in an early point of developing civilization is to say that God did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, the whole point of the book is like not like, it's not trying to like keep this information from these barbarians. It's like, how do we properly drip feed the information back into humanity so that we can get back on the path? So like the final,
how much do I put on? Yeah, how much do I put on the chia pet?
in the last step, in the last section of the book, the guy that becomes the merchant priest, Mallow, he's not a Foundation native. He's a trader. He was a trader from one of the like border planets, and he's like he's figured it out. He was educated on the world on with the Foundation, but he's not like, it's basically the first time someone who's not a native to Terminus becomes the one in power. And it's sort of like this sort of evolution of like, oh, everyone around us, like, everything's broken, we have to fix it. Oh, we have this, like, we have to protect ourselves, let's educate the barbarians. That's to, oh, okay, the barbarians have been, taken, they're no longer a threat, let's expand. Then you start bringing in these, outsiders into the fold of like how things actually work, because like now everyone's happy with the Foundation and knows that their intentions are good, to finally like, oh, it can be entrusted to sort of like outsiders a little bit. So it's like this drip feed of like escalation of bringing the knowledge back to humanity. And
let's look at the roadmap, right? So you have the fall of Rome.
Yeah.
Right? Who holds on to the knowledge? The knowledge is absorbed and repurposed and repackaged to the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths by the Roman Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
The Renaissance, you have this tenuous relationship between the philosophers and the Vatican, and you have butting of heads with the ruling class.
Yeah.
You have the wealthy, in the 1700s, dabbling in chemistry.
Yeah.
You have personal interest eventually funding education. You have the first, the 1600s, 1500s. Oxford's older, but you have the foundations of universities stemming originally from holy orders.
Yeah.
And then in the New World, in the United States and stuff, you have interest and diplomacy and all these things stemming from the graduation of religious institution is the one having knowledge. And then you have...
that's the difference between like the difference between the traders and the merchant princes is you have the traders that show up and they're like, look at my stuff, isn't it cool? And then you have like it evolved into like the guys that are like, if I provide the right sort of industry, this planet will flourish. But I have to keep, but like finding the way to like maintain that power, and you sort of, it's basically like a mirror to like up to that point, like
the Industrial Revolution, and like growing out of the Age of Sail. You have Europe growing from like the Franco-Prussian War into World War One, and you almost see a parallel. And it's almost as if Harry Seldon knew there isn't some solution to fix humanity, but that humanity follows a course that I've seen through psychohistory, through history.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? I just need to sort of make sure that we follow the prescription.
Yeah. And then ideally it's in such a way that they, we don't make the same mistakes that the original Empire did. Is Joel coming back?
Yeah, it was not as urgent as I thought it was going to be. So
yeah.
I was like, I heard something and I was like, oh shit, what are they doing? And then it was not that. So
okay. That was our in conclusion, I think. Really that so looking at Foundation as an individual work, basically Harry Seldon having a prescription for humanity based on previous recorded history, where the human race would go. Ben said it best. How do we baby? How do we disseminate this knowledge and don't give a baby steak, right? Don't give a baby honey. How do we spoon feed civilization back to greatness? Because it really is cyclical.
This is what I really enjoy about our discussions, is because we each bring a different view. It's like any conversation Ben and I ever have. He always is much more on the technical side. Like, he's much more processes, and I'm a fan of processes too. But again, psychology has been there for a long time, and I look at what is the motivations. Yeah. So I read, as I've been saying this whole time, I read a bit, what is the motivations of these characters? And I look at, and so to me, you guys are telling this story about, like, it's like he's given a book, a process of how to like preserve, protect, utilize, and then reintegrate. And I'm looking at it as these people that are now amassing, they're also at the beginning, they're aligned. They're preserving, protecting, and then they start amassing authority and power. And then how does it benefit the self? Mm-hmm. And that's the story I took of it as.
So what I mentioned this to Brennan. It was like what I skimmed over is this guy that's the final, like that it ends with the Henry Mallow. He is actually not. He's not from Terminus.
Yeah, I know that.
He's from like an exterior planet. So it's like what we basically saw. And I'm sorry for anyone who's watching. It's basically like the path that the Foundation is following is like, how do we drip feed this information back to humanity so that they can like grow on a good path to like actually not being left behind? So
one of the most interesting facets of that whole thing is not only did Terminus drip feed it, not like hold it from the rest of the galaxy, they also withheld a lot of it from themselves, from the main people. They they would educate priests. This is a religion, They would hold a lot of the stuff to themselves, so they really sequestered knowledge and information. I don't know
what you don't see. What you don't see in that section, and I don't know how far you got, was like the leadership of Terminus. Like the only one that really knew that was going on with the Four Kingdoms, was the mayor.
Yeah,
because he served as mayor for 40 years or 50 years or whatever.
They all thought he was an idiot too, because when he was talking about sequestering these, getting these relationships, they were like, "Why are you doing that? You're a traitor to the people."
Yeah,
like you're talking to all of them. They're trying to destroy us. What's wrong with you? And he's like, "You don't understand that I'm going to give them power, but they won't know how to fix it. Yeah, they won't know how to use it. They have to come to me. Yeah, so they won't threaten us ever again."
But you can't let that information get out, because then if it does get out to the kingdoms, then we're all screwed, because the kingdoms are going to try and they think that the priests serve at the pleasure of the kings, but the priests serve at the pleasure of Harry Seldon.
Right. That's what makes it interesting. But we all know, like, when you sequester knowledge, then you get like one community that they are the pillar of everything. Like they are the ones you have to go to.
Which is what happens with the Age of Traders, where they finally like start like letting the letting the knowledge go out about how things work. They don't provide like the stuff to make it work, but they like let the traders know how to fix their ships. The traders know like the base like knowledge of how to like maintain their product. But they don't they don't know they don't have access to like all of the factories and stuff that are in Terminus.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's a drip feed, like building things back up to like where they were, but like without like.
It was interesting.
But
it opened
if
up
they
the
would have
possibility and a bunch of other questions of like what would, because it does like cool thing with sci-fi is you could create this expansive systems, and look at what happened. Since we've referenced Game Workshop a million times, how much shit people have just made up and thrown into it, and like GW keeps adding to where like the galaxy is a fucking hot garbage fire because people just come up with new ideas. Same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars, the whole galaxy is a million different things. So this world that they have created, it leads to, well, what about the people who spent 3,000 years without atomic power, or the people that have been isolated? Where did their technology move towards? Like, it opens up to so many ideas of diverging cultures while you're following just this one group.
Well, the whole thing is like
really
the whole thing is, which you get snapshots of that throughout the book. The whole thing is if the Foundation follows this path that Harry Seldon has predicted, which it gets into in the later books, humanity will be back to where it was pre-collapse by the end of 1,000 years. But if they had to,
does the book run to the end of the 1,000 years?
No,
I know.
Only
the section 3 was already the third section. There's 5 total. The third section was hard feudalism.
So by the end of the final part, So by the end of the first book, which is like the end of like the merchant print section, like I said, we're only 155 years post the Foundation.
Okay, so there's potential for another.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's more if there's more to the series. Like that
there
would
is.
Be interesting.
There is. There are a lot of
six
ancillary works to Foundation.
I mean, I would be okay with continuing the series to run it.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 total novels. But we kind of like, this is like the original novel, and then there's like 2 precursor novels that weren't written. That weren't written until later. But like, if you want to like really get into it, you'd want to go to like Foundation and Empire next, which is basically like when the Foundation comes in contact with the still pre-existing Empire that's still around. But we're coming up on time here. I don't know what people want to do. We could continue this series, or Brendan, it is your turn to pick a book.
Yes. So I've noticed that we've usually picked books that are parts of a series, and we don't mind really jumping. I think it leaves it to the viewer and to us to continue if we really want to. With that in mind, I nominate yet another book that I started and didn't finish. The Name of the Wind, published 2007 by Patrick Rothfuss. It's the first book in the Kingkiller Chronicle.
This drives me crazy that we don't finish series, right? They're jumping.
It
fundamentally bothers me.
I know, I want
and
to,
now
but
I have
I feel, but if
series of recommendations that I'm like, we have to add.
It's a la carte. we're at the salad bar. You know, we're at the chocolate fountain. We're sort of having a little bit of everything.
I'm telling you, I'm the guy that goes to the buffet and tends to get the same 4 things and be like, I like these. I will eat these until I am sated.
So Joel, we're at a Chinese buffet. Why are you only eating pudding? See, I like pudding. I don't understand the problem.
All right.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, Jason Voorhees is here. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for walking. Oh my, I got mini Jason Voorhees over here.
That's terrifying than I remember in the movies.
That's my costume for Saturday. So again, reminder: we'll be back again with a continuation of Candlekeep Mysteries on Wednesday, and then on Saturday we'll have an extra long Call of Cthulhu session with original GM. And we're looking very much forward to it. And
what is the tentative start time for that?
We set it online on our group chat. Was it 2? I believe it was 2 p.m. Central, but I will make sure of that and update tomorrow.
Okay.
And then we have on Monday our interview with Maria V. Schneider, the author of Poison Study, one of the previous books that we studied. So, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.